Welcome to the Big Change the Film interview series. My name is Jason Cohen. I personally have lost over 120 pounds, and every week I chat with people who've also lost significant amounts of weight, hear their stories, and pass along some of that inspiration to others. Including today's guest and myself, the total pounds lost is now to 9,995 pounds. This week's guest is Jim Balla, who lives outside of Detroit. Jim told me that he grew up always buying husky clothes, and by the time that he graduated high school, he weighed 300 pounds. Jim had diabetes type 2, he had high cholesterol, and told me that he was overall in terrible shape. One day Jim decided to give a plant-based diet a try, and Jim told me that he was able to accomplish in 4 days what his doctor wasn't able to accomplish in 10 years in terms of quality of life and everything else getting better. He's now off of his diabetic medicine, his high blood pressure meds, and he's lost a total of 164 pounds. Jim told me that he feels more alive than ever. He feels like before he wasn't in control of his life, and now he finally has his life back. We have a great conversation, and I hope that you enjoy. Thanks so much for watching. I'm here with Jim Balla. We got connected through Tim Kaufman, and he has lost a huge amount of weight. And Jim, just first off, thanks for taking the time to chat with me. And maybe we could just start off with where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me. Number one, appreciate that. I'm a 56-year-old painter from just outside of Detroit in Redford suburb.
Okay, and then you've lost a bit of weight. So how much have you lost so far?
I lost 164 pounds, and that's exactly what I weigh right now. So I lost half my body weight.
Wow, crazy. So, you're a little bit later in life, obviously. So, what was life like for you growing up? Were you always overweight? Was it something you put on later in life?
No, I was always overweight. I remember as a kid, my father, he always wanted steak and potatoes, and they always encouraged me to drink milk. I used to spend some time at my cousin's house when I was younger, about 8 or 9. He used to send me off for 2 weeks for 3 gallons of milk, and that was it. So we never had any packaged foods. My mom didn't believe in any kind of packaged foods or canned foods. Back in the mid-'60s, she didn't trust them. So my dad had a big garden. We always had potatoes and vegetables, but there was always a steak on a plate. And I remember the sandwiches when they sent me off for lunch had a big stack of ham on it, like an inch thick, and a lot of cheese, and all the other kids were jealous, because I had that big Dagwood sandwich that no one else could have. But I think they thought that they were feeding me right, and that's the foods that I want. And there was really nobody else that was overweight in my family, except we did have some heart disease. But they thought we were doing all right. Yes, I was always overweight. I remember in elementary school with the husky clothes, and even through junior high school also, and going into high school. I think when I graduated from high school, I was up around 300 pounds.
Wow. And I think, in a message, you said a couple things to me. One of those things were that, you were self-conscious about your weight in junior high school. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit, what that was like, being in high school and what your concerns were back then?
People used to mention it. I'm not going to say I was teased heavily. I guess I had a strong personality, and I really wouldn't take teasing that much from anybody, but it was always mentioned. And yeah, I was self-conscious about it. I tried to lift weights and join the football team and all that other stuff. But yeah, I noticed it very self-conscious, being 260, 280, and then 300 when I was a senior. So yeah, it was kind of difficult.
Yeah, and then looking back, I know you mentioned a couple things about diet, but looking back now, 300 pounds at your high school weight, although it is a bit less than your highest, it's not that far off. What do you think were some of the major contributors, earlier in life to that? Looking back now,
just the way I learned to eat from my parents. I mean, I never had potato chips, never had ice cream. It was always big dinners. I mean, we always had a huge piece of steak, and, there was always milk and stuff like that. But desserts and that really wasn't a problem. It was just very large dinners, bacon and eggs for breakfast, ham sandwiches and cheese for lunch. And then, large dinners always with a big 16-ounce or larger steak on the plate. So,
wow. And then, from there you continue to gain weight. What continued? Did you just kind of continue in that same diet? Did your diet get worse? Did you become less active? Like what made it so that you continue to gain weight?
Oh, I'm sorry. When I got out of high school, I tried to lose some weight. I guess I was subconscious and tried to do it, but the only way we knew how to was like to limit how much I ate. So I would try to do half the amount of steak I ate and maybe drink half the amount of milk. But it never worked. Nothing ever worked. I might lose a few pounds, but I couldn't sustain it. I was always hungry, and yeah, it just never worked. And then when I got out of high school, I tried the Atkins thing, and sure, that worked. I lost a little bit of weight with Atkins, but then, I put it right back on. I think I lost 50 pounds or something like that. And and then I guess in my 30s, or no, in my later 20s, I got serious about it. I did lose about 100 pounds just from limiting my food, starting to run, and being more physically active. But that started when I went and seen a doctor, and they gave me a diet pill. And I guess the diet pill curbed my appetite, so I wasn't hungry all the time. But of course, after I stopped taking that after 2 years, I started gaining my weight back and started eating the way I guess I ate on the diet pill. But with the diet pill, I was always going. I didn't feel like eating all the time. So, and then I just gained it back and I couldn't sustain it.
Yeah, and then I think you had some health issues. One of which you talked about being hospitalized at the age of 34. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I remember after eating a high fat meal that I had a pain in my stomach and it hurt really bad. I went in, they said it was pancreatitis. Um, they diagnosed me with diabetes. They sent me home, but they never really gave me any meds or anything, and they really never said too much about it. They kept me in the high school or in the hospital for a couple of days, and they released me until it went away. They didn't feed me, and they said, "See your regular doctor." So the doctor didn't give me any meds until maybe a couple of years later. He started me on some medication for cholesterol and high blood pressure, and I think it was diabetes, but I don't really remember if he gave me diabetic meds. I think he did give me metformin or something. Either I quit taking it. I don't remember.
Yeah, and so just to understand right, you were diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 34?
Well, I went in for pancreatitis, so I'm guessing that I was diagnosed. But why did I get sent home from the hospital without medication? This is what I don't understand. I don't remember telling me you're pre-diabetic or giving me a lecture or anything. But then the doctor, like a couple years later, gave me meds for diabetes. Said your sugar was high here. You have to take these. But he never formally came out and said you have diabetes. I'm concerned about your sugar level.
Yeah, and then I know you kind of briefly talked about it there, but it sounds like as you continue to get older, your issues with your health just kind of got worse. Is that right?
Yeah, everything got really bad. I was having a hard time climbing the ladder. I'm a painting contractor. Hard time working, always tired at 300, 320 pounds. And life was difficult, especially at work. But I had a lot of fantastic customers. The customers all respected me. They would wait for me. They wouldn't hire me anybody else. So I'm really glad that I had that going and they trusted me completely in their homes. So, life was good that way with my customers and with my business, and I was making money and things were good. So, it really didn't bother me that much. I knew my health was bad, but, I just didn't do anything about it. Tried to, but it never worked.
And when it was at its worst, can you give me kind of a picture of that? Maybe tell me what all you had going on that, kind of was, give us a picture of what your health or lack thereof looked like at that point?
Well, I guess the really bad stuff started happening probably in 2009 when I was really bad. I had a little accident at work. I fell down and I just when I fell, I kind of sat down on my butt, and when I sat down on the butt, there was a wire brush on the floor, and I got poked with a bristle of that wire brush. And I didn't think anything of it. When I got home and I changed, I noticed a little dot of blood, maybe like you would get on your face when you shave or something. So I didn't think anything of it. And that night, we got called into the hospital. I had a cousin that was in the hospital dying of alcoholism. And so we went and visited him. They didn't think he was going to make it through the night. And when we got to the ICU, they had warned us that there was bad MRSA infections and staph infections going on. And they asked if anybody had an open wound. And I didn't even think about that at that time, thinking about my cousin dying and everything else. That's the last thing you think about is poking yourself with a little wire brush. And it didn't really even bleed. So they dressed us up in the plastic suits, and they gave us the booties and the masks and everything. And we went in and seen them and said our goodbyes and all that. And then the next day, or 2 days later, I noticed that I had like a pimple back there where I had fell and poked myself. But I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, that's a strange place for a pimple. I wonder what's going on. And it was a little sensitive, and I felt a little bump. And then just blew that off. Then the next day I got up, and now this thing is like a little larger. It's kind of like half the size of a golf ball. And I'm like, wow, that's strange. And I still didn't put two and two together that it was from when I fell at work. And then I got up that day, I think it was a Saturday. And I had a $10,000 deductible to go into the hospital without a doctor's note. So I didn't want to go into the emergency room and have to shell out 10 grand. So I decided to wait to get a doctor's appointment until Monday, knowing that there's probably something wrong. So on Sunday, I woke up, and now that little golf ball size thing was probably as large as a tennis ball. Got pretty scared. Still, I didn't go to the hospital. I waited until Monday. Now the thing had grown the size of a softball. I went into the doctor first thing in the morning, and he's like, oh my God, you got a huge abscess. This thing is all infected. You need to go to the emergency room now. So he had my friend drive me right there. When I got into the emergency room, they informed me that I might have to amputate my leg and maybe some other male parts, and I don't really remember anything else. They rushed me into the operating room, and I signed a few papers. They rushed me in the operating room, and I came out. I remember I still had a leg, and I was happy about that. And I'm sorry, this is a difficult story to tell. I had an operation every day for 23 days where they would go in and they would have to check me out and see if there was any more infection. So they cut a little bit of the infection out the first day. The next day they would have to cut a little bit more, and they couldn't sew me up or anything. They had to leave that open like flesh wound there. I just remember how painful it was every night when they would come and clean it. And I just remember some of the nurses and aides in the hospital would actually put, because I'm screaming, and they were putting warm towels over my forehead and hugging me and trying to console me because they cut so much of my leg off. Well, every day they had to cut more and more and more. And I remember after about 20 days, I looked down at my leg, and from my knee up to my waist, I didn't see any more meat. All I seen was like the bone of my leg. And I guess I was just as bad in the behind because I injured myself on my butt back there. So they had cut a lot of that off, and then down on the inner thigh, and then coming around. So on the 26th day, they did an operation, and they nicked the inside of my butt, and they didn't know that they did it. And because they were operating back there. And after I got done with the operation, I was like bleeding and bleeding. They didn't know where the bleeding was going through, and they kept pumping me full of blood. And as they were giving me more blood, my stomach started blowing up. So what they had done is after they operated back there, so the blood wouldn't get into my butt, they kind of plugged me up with a little bit of gauze, but I was bleeding right above the gauze. So when I was bleeding, all the blood was going into my stomach and it had no way of coming out. So it filled me up, and I would complain that I felt like I had to go to the bathroom. And whenever you do that, you're on narcotics, they stop the narcotics and they won't give you any morphine or pain pills or anything because you're constipated. And the pain was so horrible without pain pills. Um, I remember asking my brother, please put the pillow over my face. Do something, please, Johnny. End this. I can't take this pain anymore. Push me out the window. Do anything. Do anything, please. And I had to go to the bathroom. It was probably, I don't know, it was hours. And I finally said, okay, I'm going to go. And my brother said when I went, it looked like someone took a 5-gallon can of blood and just poured it all over my bed and all over the floor. All the blood they were giving me like ran into my stomach, and it just was all over the floor. There was a poor girl that started her first day of as a nurse, and I guess she quit after that day and she lost a pair of shoes. Not to laugh at that, but because the nurses and everybody were so great. But they took me back in the operating room, and they lost me 3 times that day. They didn't know where the blood was going. They didn't understand anything, but they were operating like on my backside. And when they went in to try to figure out where the bleeding is coming from in my intestines, they went in from the top side from my stomach. And then they seen there was so much blood in there, they thought the blood was coming from the top side. So they cut out a bunch of my intestines. I think maybe up to 12 feet, or was it 6 feet? I'm not sure. But they cut out a lot of my upper intestines. And then they brought me back out of the operating room. I'm still bleeding. They still couldn't figure out what's going on. They took me in again that day. And that's when I ended up passing away. They brought me back to life. They started looking around, couldn't find anything again. They brought me back out, and then a new doctor took over a couple hours later, and he started looking over everything that the previous doctor did. I guess I passed away on the table again. And they brought me back, and then he noticed where they had nicked me just one inch inside the rectum area there. So they fixed that up, and then they figured this guy has had his intestines ripped out, put on the operating table. We're looking for all the problems on what's going on here, and couldn't figure anything out. And they put me in a coma for 3 weeks because they said there's no way he's going to be able to take the pain. I remember waking up from the coma. I thought I was dead. There was a friend there, and I asked him, writing on a piece of paper, am I dead? It was, how it is coming out of anesthesia. It was just a horrible thing. So I ended up being in the hospital for another 4 months, and they had to regrow all the skin on my legs. They were growing skin in a petri dish and then putting it on and growing it back slowly. And since I was overweight and I had lost some weight when I was in the hospital, they pulled it down from my stomach and took some skin off my stomach to kind of cover up my leg and regrow the skin. But the whole time I was in the hospital for 5 months, they never did any physical therapy on me. I never got up. I never walked. I remember I could barely use my arms. I couldn't even feed myself. My brother or the nurses were feeding me. And just a very difficult time. And they sent me in a nursing home. And when I left out of the hospital, they released me, and I still had 5 infections in my abdomen area. I had a bladder infection and all kind of other infections. And man, when the ambulance was taking me to the rehab center, that ride was so painful. It was horrible. They got me into the rehab center, and they were like, wow, your fever is so high. They sent me back out to the hospital. They found out I had 5 infections. I went to another hospital. They put me in quarantine for 2 weeks. They wouldn't let anybody see me. And then I got out, and they started working with me back in a nursing home. And I was in there for a couple months before I could learn again how to walk and how to move my limbs and get through life again. So it was very, very difficult, the operation. And then, they started me on insulin. They said I had full-fledged diabetes and my cholesterol was high. I think when I went in there it was 360, 390. And I was in really bad shape. So I remember getting out of the hospital, seeing my doctor, gave me a bunch of medication for diabetes, for cholesterol. I walked out of there with 8 medications. My leg would continuously swell up every single day when I got out of the hospital. I guess they cut out so much of the skin and so much of my upper thigh that there's lymph nodes in there that control the water in your leg. And that was all cut out. And so my leg would never regulate the water in it. And if I'd stay on my feet 4 to 6 hours, it just would swell up huge. I could barely fit it in my pants anymore. And the pain was terrible. And then they cut so much of my colon, and the colon's job is to take the water out of the stool. I had diarrhea 8 to 12 times a day. I remember I step outside and I had to run right back inside and go to the bathroom. And it was like this when I got home from the hospital for a couple months. It really didn't get any better. And a year later, I was still having that problem with the swelling. Now I was on 8 medications, following the doctor's advice. He told me, I can't have carbohydrates for my diabetes, and he gave me a diet: eat the fish, eat the chicken, and, stay away from the potatoes, and gave me that whole diabetic. And I followed it. I followed it to a T. And I kept gaining weight, and gaining weight. I got out of the hospital about 200 pounds, and a year and a half later, I'm up to 320. And I followed that for 5 years. Now, my health, I would look down at that leg, and my leg was turning black down at the bottom. And I'm overweight. I can't climb a ladder. My legs hurt. My legs are turning black. The circulation is horrible. And I'm like, it just scared of my life, scared of what I could do. I really couldn't work at that time. And I started hiring a couple of guys that could help me because I couldn't do the work that I used to do. And I hired this one guy about 30 years old, and he was asking me questions about health. Why he would ask a 330-pound guy with all these diseases about health, I don't know. But I remember I had some cassette tapes from Dr. John McDougall. And I brought them in the next day. That was November 22nd, 2015. I played a half hour of them tapes, and I did it for somebody else, for them to hear it. When I heard it, I'm like, Jim, here's your answer. Here's your answer. That was my aha moment. I'm like, oh my God, maybe this will help me. So that day at lunch, I threw the lunch out that I brought, and I went down to the local fruit market. I got some fruit, and I started 100% on that day. I've never cheated since. It's been 22 months now. 3 days after I started the diet, I never had any more problems with diarrhea. I went to the bathroom perfect once or twice a day. Here I am suffering with something for 5 years. Could not believe that one of my symptoms is gone. The next day was the 4th day, and got home from work, thought it was unusual. My leg wasn't hurting. The swelling stopped in my leg on the 4th day. It took 3 and 4 days on a plant-based diet to do what my doctor couldn't do for 5 years on medication. I was convinced 100%. I went on this diet because of my leg and because of my stomach problems. They were gone. Within the 10th day, I started noticing I had to start reducing my diabetes or my insulin. I was taking up to 130 units of insulin per day. And I figured I didn't need any when I got up in the morning, and then it went up a little bit high to about 200. I took maybe 10 milligrams for lunch and a little bit after dinner for 2 days, and then after it was the 10th day, I didn't need any more insulin, and I never took a shot. Wow. So within 10 days, I was off 130 units of insulin a day. I would check my sugar. It was between 60 and 90. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God, my leg is perfect. I don't run to the bathroom. My diabetes is gone. How do you question something like that? When you listen to the tapes, when you listen to his YouTube videos, John McDougall's, he tells you this is going to happen. And you can't believe it, but you say it's worth a try. And you try it, and it happened. I'm sorry. The next day, I remember I felt a little bit weak, so I checked my sugar. And then I'm like, well, my sugar's fine. I wonder what's going on. And then somebody suggested to me, they're like, why don't you check your blood pressure? So I had the blood pressure cuff because I was monitoring that also. I had it out in the truck, and I checked it. It was like 88/55 or something like that. And I was still taking my blood pressure medication. So I didn't consult my doctor or anything. I just quit taking my blood pressure meds. And so here it is now. I think it's 11th or 12th day, and I'm off blood pressure, off diabetic medication, the medication for my stomachs. I didn't stop the cholesterol meds because I didn't have a blood test, and I wouldn't stop my thyroid medication until I went into my doctor. I went in about 2.5 months later. He seen that I lost like 30 pounds, maybe 35 pounds. And he says, oh, your medication is working good. I noticed that you're losing weight. And I said, well, actually, I haven't taken your medication in probably 2 months. I started on a plant-based diet. No, you can't do that. Oh, my God, you're going to kill yourself. You need to have meat. You come over to my house, I'll feed you good meat. I've got bear meat. I've got deer meat in the refrigerator. And you need to have that good meat. You have to have meat. You don't know what you're doing. You can't take yourself off these medications. And he sat me in there and he lectured me for 45 minutes on how I was going to kill myself. But the funny thing is he had an intern in the room with me. And the intern just listened to everything he had to say. He brought me back in his office after I stopped and waited, and he wrote me this more prescriptions. And I said, I'm not going to take these. I don't need these. My blood pressure's already tanked when I took the meds. I don't know why you want to put me on it. And he did a blood test on me and all that. And then the intern said that he was a vegetarian. And I'm like, well, how do you answer to your intern who said he's a vegetarian, but you're telling me that I'm killing myself? He still hasn't got off that. Every time I go see him every 3 months for a blood test, I don't need him for anything else now, except for him to write me a thyroid medicine prescription. But he still tells me, you don't know what you're doing. In 9 months, I lost 140 pounds. I'm in his office, and he still tells me I'm killing myself. I look emaciated. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't need any medication. My diabetes is perfect. Now, after the first visit, I forgot to tell you, my cholesterol came back at 134. So he still wrote me that for simvastatin, a statin, on that first visit. And I just quit taking it. I'm like, I'm not going to take a statin medication at 134. I mean, my cholesterol is perfect. I can't believe this in 2.5 months. So I didn't require any medication. And actually, he cut the dose on my thyroid medication 50% on that first visit because, of my numbers. And that's where I am right now with the thyroid meds. I can't get off of them completely. But in 9 months, I lost 140 pounds. He said that I looked emaciated when I went and seen him. I wasn't taking any of his meds, still telling me and insisting I'm going to kill myself, and I don't know what I'm doing. And I can't believe it. I tried talking him into it. I belong to this group in Detroit called Plant-Based Nutrition Supergroup. They've got a program called Doctors Teaching Doctors, where Dr. Joel Kahn is part of this group. And there's a couple other plant-based doctors that are in our area. And they're teaching a class that will give your medical continuing education courses. We even pay for that for our doctors. And I invited my doctor to attend this, and he declined. He didn't want any part of it and didn't want to be advised about nutrition and how nutrition could fix things. So I'm looking for another doctor right now, but I don't need a doctor. I haven't been to the doctor now in a year. I feel fantastic. I did lose another 20 pounds um, after the first 9 months when I went down to 140. I started walking because I had so much energy. Now I still walk 4 miles a day with my dog, and I don't bike or any of that because the dog's an old man. He's 10 years old and he can't follow me on the bike and he can't run or jog with me. But I have a problem jogging. My left leg, I still got it. I'm thankful that I still have it. I never blamed the doctors who tried to sue them that they made a mistake and cut my stomach open. Never bitter about anything that happened. They saved my life. I'm glad they do. They did. They saved my leg. I was happy to still have it, even though it swelled up and now the problems are gone. And I get to walk and I get to function as a normal human being now. I can't believe it. I look down at my body. I can't even believe it's me. And I'm walking. I have a hard time running. That leg kind of lags behind a little bit, and I feel like I'm going to fall down. So until it gets stronger, I haven't lifted weights, but I'll work 12 hours a day until it gets stronger. Maybe I'll start running or biking a little bit more. But, I've got the dog. I want to include him in the activity, so I just walk 4 miles a day now.
So you talked before about, literally having to hire other people to do your job for you. How has that changed? What's that like now? Are you back to 100% able to do everything on your own? And maybe draw a contrast between that and not even when you were at your worst, but just whenever you were bigger. What does work life look like for performing the things that you have to do to do your job now compared to before?
6 and 7 hours after I worked like before, I was just running out of energy. My leg was swelling up. This was after the operation, and I just wasn't doing good. And I would take one step off the ladder, and I couldn't climb the ladder anymore. With that one leg injured, the other leg was starting to get Charlie horses because I was depending on that leg either to climb stairs or climb the ladder. The other leg, the left leg, was doing all the work that the right leg couldn't. And I get down on my knees and I could barely get up. I had to crawl to a stairway or push myself off a 5-gallon bucket. It was horrible. Just, I really thought my life is over. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay for my house? What's going to happen in my life? I was married. I got divorced. That was 10 years before. So I'm a single guy. And I was scared about everything. There's nobody to take care of me. Am I going to need this? So, my life has just totally changed. One of the guys worked for me for about a year. He got offered a better job, what he's been looking for, and I was glad he got the job. So he quit, and then another guy was working for me, actually, till about 2 months ago. And then his wife got offered a job in Texas over where you are. And she works for Delta Airlines. So he took off. And I would still kind of rely on Dave to do some of the heavy work and some of the lifting and carrying of the ladders and all that. But since Dave left a couple of months ago, I've got to do that myself. And I'm actually getting stronger because I was relying on him. Now I'm carrying the ladders. The other day I worked on a 28-foot ladder. I run up and down that ladder now with no problems at all. And I'm not even contemplating hiring anybody. I feel like Superman all of a sudden. I mean, I can't believe how good I feel. It's just amazing. The night and day difference is just amazing. From laying in bed all day when I got home, keeping my leg up above my head, and just being lazy, not wanting to get up, and just stopping and getting something on the way home to eat, to now, I mean, I cook. I love cooking. I have so much energy when I get home, and I can't sit still. Life is great.
And I'm thinking, obviously, I'm a little limited on my knowledge of diabetes, but I know what I've learned from other people, especially through these conversations. I'm thinking, like when they tell you in the hospital, which obviously came from a very different situation, that you may have to have your leg amputated and you're experiencing swelling and you're looking down and your leg's black and blue. Like some of these things are almost a little reminiscent of some of those issues that people deal with later in life with diabetes. Do you think that knowing what life looked like for you at your kind of worst and knowing what potentially life could look like if that continues to develop, do you think that subconsciously in any way like informed or prepared you to make that change? Like were you fully aware of what life could look like later in life with, heart disease, with diabetes, and if those things continue to get worse?
You know, when I got out of the hospital and I had all those operations, and that's when I found out I was so sick with the diabetes and the bad cholesterol and everything, I always blamed it on that operation. I always blamed everything on me being sick, like I was, and I see myself getting worse, but I always attributed it to I was unlucky that I had this injury and I got these infections. I worried about heart disease a little bit, but I guess, and the diabetes, you're told once you have diabetes, you're never going to get off the medication. You're never going to get better. You got to take this medicine for the rest of your life. I just thought that's the way it's going to be. And the same thing. I mean, my grandfather, he had a stroke when he was like, I don't know, 68 or 70, and then he lived another 12 years and had a heart attack. He passed away. My grandmother, she died of a heart attack. My dad died of lung cancer from painting, and my mom and brother had celiac sprue. My brother's got it real bad with his is tropical sprue, so they can't eat any wheat or anything at all. And my brother's diet is just horrible. I mean, any wheat, I'm sorry, and he eats all meat. He'll eat 12 eggs for breakfast. You try to tell him, don't do that, and he doesn't want to listen. But he's thin. He's about 205 pounds, something like that. And he says, oh, I never have high blood pressure. The doctor checks it. My cholesterol is perfect and all that. So, I don't know. He just doesn't want to listen. So I never contributed any of that. I don't know why. I just thought that I was born like this and I'm the unlucky one and I have to manage it. But I never knew that I could solve it with a plant-based diet until I started listening to those tapes. And every day since that first 6 hours of cassette tapes that John McDougall had, I went onto the website and I found YouTube video after YouTube video. I started watching his videos, one every day. Dr. Furman's, Dr. Gregor's, every one of the Novak, Dr. Lyle. I just educated myself. T. Colin Campbell. I read all their books. I had their books playing in my ear when I was painting. I have an Audible. I was educating myself every day since I started this diet. And that's when I put nutrition and diseases together, knowing that it could all be solved. And I was just amazed and actually angry that no one ever told me this before. And it's just amazing, what that did. And I wish I would have known this earlier in life, but I blamed everything on the operation. I just thought I was born like that, unlucky.
And, you mentioned, and I may get the letters wrong, but PBSN, PBGSN.
PBNSG, Plant-Based Nutrition Supergroup.
Yeah. So, I've talked to people, I've heard, stories about it, and I know it's, kind of a really strong, amazing thing, in Detroit and the surrounding areas. What is that, you're 22 months out now, what does that do for you now? And do you have any recommendations for people who maybe aren't in an area where, that is, at their fingertips?
I started eating plant-based for 4 or 5 months, And then, none of my friends, you can't go over there and eat anything. So I'm always making it at home. I would take some to my friends. I didn't care if anybody said, oh, we can't feed you, but no one really did. I brought my own food with me. I never felt bad at the party. No one ever pressured me or eating weird, or it never bothered me. I didn't care. I'm sticking to this 100%. Look what happened to me. People didn't recognize me. They didn't know me. Oh my God, what are you doing, Jim? You look great. You look fantastic. So nobody really yet ever said anything. I said, I just changed the food. I changed my diet. I'm off all my meds and the weight is falling off. I eat unlimited amounts of the plant food and the stuff that I could have. I told them I make chili for myself. I make lasagna. I eat oatmeal cookies like they're going out of style, but you make the cookies like, with the proper foods in it. You sweeten it with dates and not sugar, and you use apples in there instead of apple juice or, concentrated sugar and eggs and all that. The food that I eat is just like anybody else's. You'll never catch me munching on a salad because I'm always eating like normal food. But I'm the type of guy, too, that I could throw 4 or 5 potatoes in the oven and have some frozen corn, and I'm good for that, and for, dinner that way. A lot of times, that's the way I eat for lunch. I'll take 4 potatoes, and I'll eat the potatoes at lunch like an apple. And it's not a big deal. Or I'll take a can of beans, or sometimes I'll take corn. I have corn and beans, organic beans, rolling around in the truck. And if I have my lunch and I'm still a little bit hungry, I just open something else up. So I'm always carrying food with me wherever I go. And, a lot of times I don't have a microwave. I don't mind eating beans out of a can sitting in the truck. I'm filthy dirty. I smell like turpentine, and it's like I'm not going to start using somebody's kitchen. So I'm a simple eater, and things are fine. And a lot of times I come home and I'm tired, or I just want to chill out for a while and I don't want to cook. I feel like going out for a walk. I'll just add baked potatoes and corn or whatever. It's just my favorite. I forgot the question that you asked me.
No, it's okay. Just, what is that, PBG, what is it? PBSG. What is it, what is it meant for you personally, since you started this and since you've gotten involved? And then, with that, for somebody who's not in Detroit, for somebody who lives in, the middle of nowhere, Kansas, or, XYZ, and maybe doesn't have that support group, what's something that you think that people could kind of implement for themselves?
Like I said, I ate this way for 4 or 5 months, and I didn't have any friends to back me up. So I got on the internet one day, and I'm like, you know what? I wonder if there's a group around me that eats vegan. And I put plant-based in there instead of vegan. And because I don't eat oils or any of that, I'm really strict on what I eat. And I found PBNSG. And a month before, they were advertising that John McDougall was speaking there. And here, oh my God, if I could have spoke with him, what I would have told him, and I missed him by a month. But when that group was in Detroit, in my city, near Birmingham, a couple miles away, where I grew up, I was like, I can't believe a club like this is in Detroit. I think there were 1,700 members when I joined. And I went to the first meeting, and Dr. Furman was speaking a month after John McDougall. So all these guys that I learned from are coming once a month to Birmingham, right down the street from me, and speaking. Rip Esselstyn, Jane and Colin Esselstyn came, and everybody who's anybody in the plant-based world. Doug Lyle is coming on October the 28th to speak with us. It's just fantastic. But anyways, I got in with like-minded people, and they have small group meetings around every city where 20 people will get together, like in my area or on the east side. I think there's 28 small group meetings that they have in different cities going on once a month. I could go to somebody's house and have a potluck plant-based dinner made with no oils, and it's just great to share experiences and stories with the other people. Anybody who is welcome. We're non-judgmental. If you haven't ever been on a plant-based diet, you just want some information, you could come to the meeting. You could come to a small group. We'll tell you our experiences, show you how to do it, how to transition if you're interested. We help anybody, everybody. We have a big website. Now there's 4,700 members. So in 3.5 years, this group has grown to 4,700. I guess we have the largest plant-based community that there is in the United States here in Detroit. Anybody from any state could log on to pbnsg.org. There's message boards. There's people that will always help them, and they could talk to anybody. There's recipe ideas. There's all the videos from the speakers that have been there. There's just huge amounts of information on pbnsg.org. So I would encourage anybody to go on the website. We welcome everybody. I was so happy to be in this organization after 2 and 3 months. I started doing a lot of volunteer work. I do some work on the website now. I try to go to all the events and try to help them set up just on a volunteer basis. And I kind of helped Shannon. She was on your program. You interviewed her a couple of years ago. She does small groups, so we're kind of helping out because our small groups have really expanded. So I'm helping Shannon, trying to do what I can with the organization. So it's fantastic. The founder of the organization, Paul Chatlin, you should maybe get in touch with him. He's got a great story. He's been in the movie Eating You Alive and a couple other specials that I've seen. So he's a pretty big, I'm surprised you haven't. He lost 40 pounds, but his thing was he went to the Cleveland Clinic and he had 100% blockage. I don't want to tell his story, but he got a plant-based doctor that was studying underneath Esselstyn, and he actually called Essie while Paul was there and put him on the phone with him, and Esselstyn talked to him. They sent him home from the hospital. He changed his diet. Esselstyn coached him through the whole thing, and it saved his life. He's never had the bypass. He's never had any of the operations, and he's perfectly fine. And to give back, he started this organization 3.5 years ago.
Wow.
And now there's just 4,700 members. Everybody there is a real person like me. There's nothing special about anybody. We just listened and found out how important the plant-based diet is. I didn't lose 164 pounds because it was hard. It was the easiest thing I've ever done. And if other people want to learn what I did from PBNSG, just visit the website.
Yeah, I would love to have a conversation with him. Looking back, your life looks so different than it did just 24 months ago, and it sounds like really so much different than it was, from the time that you were a child. It's kind of a big question, but what has surprised you about this journey over the last 22 months that is still so fresh, is still so new, and is so different than life that you've known for pretty much your adult life?
Number one, how easy it was to implement it. Number one, that I could eat as much as I want, whenever I want. Whenever I'm hungry, which is not often now because I'm eating nutritionally dense food that's very low in calories. When you eat dinner, you're satisfied. You don't need anything. You don't feel like going to bed. You don't feel like sleeping. You want to go out and walk. I mean, it's just amazing. You want to go out and explore the outdoors. You're just happy to be alive. Everything just changes when you eat this way. I remember before I would eat a hamburger or something, I want to lay down and go to sleep for hours, and you're in this state. This is totally different. But I just stuff my face with so much food, and it's like I still feel great, and I want to go out and walk. It's unbelievable that you could eat all this food, but it's all whole food, and it's just so great for you, and you feel so good. And the more that you eat it, the more that you want to do to make your life and your diet better. I went on a fast for a couple days because I just wanted to experiment that. And then not long ago, about 2 months ago, I said, I'm going to try eating raw for 10 days and see how that feels. So I still experiment with food. I want to become healthier. But I went raw. I didn't really feel any different than I did. I still feel great, filled with energy and everything. And I guess my body's just perfectly clean on the inside. And just from eating the right foods, I try to choose organic when I can, but you can't always get some organic foods. But I do when I can, and I do what I can. And I still feel like a fat person, though. When I look in a full-length mirror and I see myself, I've got to look twice, and I'm like, who is that guy? And I've still got fat brain. I'm sorry. I'm like, oh, man, I wonder if my pants are going to fit today. And they're probably looser than they were the day before. And it's just like life is so different. Life is a joy. I feel alive. I feel like I have my life back. I wasn't in control of my life the first half. But now I'm in control of my life. I can do whatever I want. If I want to go walk around, if I want to go out and I can get in a kayak and a canoe and some things that I never wanted to do before, I'm starting to do these things and just loving nature and getting out and hiking or just walking in the woods with the dog. I'm like, oh my God, I never did any of this stuff. Look at what I missed out in life. And why did I continue feeling this way for 50 years? If I could get a hold of myself and just shake myself and say, listen, every day you come back home, you feel self-conscious, you're embarrassed about your weight, you're embarrassed about that, and you never do anything about it. What's wrong with you? I just didn't have the information. Now with the internet, the information's out there. Go to pbnsg.org, go to YouTube, go anywhere. The information's there. The books are unreal. This will absolutely change your life. I am a different person. If I see John McDougall, I think I'd hug the guy and never let him go and just say thank you. I got on his website. I told him my whole story. He knows everything. It's just, this is the diet for humans. You can't be fat. You can't be sick. It reverses all your diseases. I would never, ever go back to eating that. I never miss it, nothing. And I've got a short little story to tell you. A customer of mine came up and said, oh my God, how did you cure your diabetes? I have it. I said, Jim, diabetes is a disease of choice. You can get rid of this. You have type 2 diabetes. It's the food that you eat. I can never give up dairy products. It's like, I can't put cream in my coffee. I'm like, put almond milk in there. So I'm trying to get him to understand it. He thinks he's doing something good by drinking 2% milk. And I'm telling him, well, there's really 34% fat in 2% milk because they rate the calories in milk by weight and not calories like every other food. So where you think you're drinking 2% milk fat, it's 34% milk fat. And when I did that, I picked up the carton of milk and the lid wasn't on all the way, and it spilled down the side and got on my hand. I couldn't put the milk jug down fast enough to go wash my hands. And he reacted. He's like, oh my God, are you that freaked out because it got in here? And I said, yes. I said, this just disgusts me. My whole attitude towards meat, that I know what it will do, ice cream, dairy products, cheese, has changed 100%. I would never even put that in my lips. I don't even want to touch it with my hand. This transition is unbelievable. The education that I got for free on the internet is unbelievable. The people at NSG, PBNSG, that have embraced me, helped me with all my questions, there to support me, just incredible. They're there on the internet or a telephone call away. Everybody, it's the simplest thing you could ever do. It's so easy. And I don't know why everybody doesn't. And I see sick people all the time that I'm going out and working, and I want to tell them. My father-in-law, the ex-father-in-law, he had congestive heart failure like a year ago. Tried to go over there and talk to him. Doesn't want anything to do with it. He's a hunter. Oh, we got to eat meat. I've had friends that have had cancer. I just tell them, hey, listen to this video. It explains about cancer. I don't want to get in their face too hard, but they're like, oh, we're not interested. We know that diet can't do anything. Our doctors are already giving us chemotherapy. And they don't want to listen. They don't want to improve it. they think that I'm wrong going on a vegan diet, a lot of these hunters and stuff like that, and they don't want to listen. So I try to tell people, but nobody wants to listen. And unless they have an open mind, it's hard to get through to them. And it's difficult. And it makes me angry that I see my friends sick and they won't take my advice. Or just not my advice, but just listen to these doctors and educate yourself so you can help yourself. I'm just a normal guy. I don't have a medical education, but I just listen to the information out there, and I want to help them, and I know they can be helped. But what can you do?
Yeah. Well, so, you kind of answered a little bit of the next two questions, but, if you could have a conversation with somebody on day one who is, in a bad spot, is, feeling some of the same feelings that you felt, before you got started and before you learned this information, what would you tell to that person on day one?
It's funny that you asked that because I ran into a person on the drive. He was a drywall contractor, and he has brought his son around. His son was about 450 pounds. He was probably 20 years old, and he had worked at Lowe's. And his dad thought, well, he's at Lowe's. He's got a sedimentary job. He's not moving around, so I'm going to have him help me with drywall. Then, I wanted to talk to that kid the whole time, and I didn't know what to say to him for 4 hours since the morning, and I watch him, and he could barely move. He reminded me of myself and what I must have looked like on the job. And then I seen they were having pizza and Doritos for lunch, and they were sitting there, him and his dad. They were friendly, and I'm like, well, I got my picture out when I was 328 pounds. And I showed them my photograph. And I said, hey, guys, this was me like 20 months ago. And I said, this is me now. And I went on a plan. And the kid was interested. His dad was interested. He was trying to lose weight and trying to get these things done. I said, hey, how about if I bring you lunch tomorrow? I came home and I cooked, and I made chili, I made oatmeal cookies, and I made a fruit sorbet made with mangoes and fresh blueberries that you put in that Yo Nana machine. That is the best sorbet or ice cream that you could ever have. Oh my God, the first time I made it, I ate a whole half gallon of it. But it's fruit, who cares? Eat as much as you want. So I took this to them the next day. And I said, look, this is food that I eat every day. They love the chili. I said, here's the whole bowl. Take it home if you want. They took it home. They said it was delicious. They couldn't believe it. And then the ice cream, they polished that right off. And the oatmeal cookies, they came up to me 3 hours later. He's lunch on, and he's like, oh my God, these cookies are so good. And I'm like, do you see, if you substitute some of the stuff and you learn how to make these items that you used to love, that you can love this food again. It's delicious food. I call myself a vegetarian or a plant-based eater, but you make a combination of these foods and grains and legumes, you can make it taste like anything you want to. And it's perfect food. And they couldn't believe it. I gave them my phone number. I didn't take theirs. I can't contact them, but they never contact me. I don't know if he did anything. I shared videos. I told them about PBMSG. I welcomed him to their group. I said, if you come, I'll pay you $15 for you to get in. But I never seen them there. So, yes, I try to help anybody if I could see that they're maybe a little bit open to it. But a lot of people aren't open to it. I wish I would have known this myself. And if I could go back in time and shake myself and say, hey, listen to these resources, then I think I would have changed way back then. So I didn't know. My parents didn't know. They were feeding me the wrong thing. I'm not blaming anything on them. We thought that's healthy food, and they still push it on it today. You need your protein. You got to drink your milk. When Americans hear protein, they think of meat and cheese and milk, and that's wrong. Cows get their protein out of the earth just like we do from green plants, right? A cow's protein is totally different. It's made for a cow. They build their own protein to grow to 600 pounds in a year. I don't want to drink their protein to be 600 pounds in a year, and I almost was. I get the amino acids that I need out of the ground, and my human protein is built at the perfect level to keep me healthy and not fat. It's just a wonderful thing. All this information that we've been fed is just all propaganda, and it makes you angry. You want to change the world. I want to help everybody out there. Everybody, my neighbors are sick. They have diabetes. They're going to get their leg amputated. You try to talk to them, they won't listen. You just got to give up. It's difficult. I'm angry. I'm angry at my doctor that he won't change, but you've got to be polite to people, and you got to let them figure it out in their own time. And I try to do what I can, but I wish I could have got through to myself.
Yeah. Well, that kind of answers the other question. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to find out more about your story, or they want to, follow up after this interview?
Come back to pbnsg.org. I can always be contacted through them, or on Paint Slinger on the internet. If somebody wants to get a hold of me on Facebook, just look for Paint Slinger. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Not on Facebook. I'm Jim Bala on Facebook. Balla. Always happy to talk to people. I've been exposed to people in India. I talked to a girl in India a lot. She asked me about certain foods and what I did when she seen my picture. And I talked to another guy in France, and there's been a couple other people that connected with me, and I just tell them what I did and how easy it was. Try to give them some recipes and help them. I'll help anybody. Just educate yourself. To this day, it's almost been 2 years later, I just got a new book on Audible. Really great. Happy Vegan by, who's it by? I forget now.
Oh, yeah, he's a music producer.
Yes, from Run DMC. I can't forget.
Richard Simmons.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just fantastic book. Every one of these books that I read, Rich Roll, he's got a great book. Engine 2, T. Colin Campbell, The China Study, Whole, all of McDougall's books. I listen to them over and over and over again and just cement this in my head, and it's like I could almost regurgitate it. Dr. Greger, oh my God, he is just the greatest. I get emails from him every day. Rhonda Patrick is another one. I'm going crazy eating broccoli sprouts every single day to get myself purified, and I just become a health nut. And if you do this, it'll happen to you too. It's so easy. You're going to want to become healthier. I'm trying to repair my body. I want all these good things that these fresh vegetables give me. I want this sulforaphane and all these chemicals that kill cancer. I did a lot of damage to my body in 55 years. I had a calcium screening for my veins, and I had a horrible score. It's like 1,300. If I didn't start this diet, I don't think I'd be talking to you right now. I never knew that I was that close. I had the scan 6 months ago. And so I'm going to just stick to this diet, go back and get rechecked, and hopefully things will get better. But my cholesterol is 106 right now. I'm not worried about dropping dead of a heart attack right now. So it's a wonderful feeling.
The only other question is, where do we get the recipe for the oatmeal cookies?
McDougall oat brand cookies from McDougall's website. It wasn't one of his books, but I pass it on to everybody.
All right,
so you can find it on the oat brand cookies. Yeah.
Oat brand cookies. All right, I'll check it out. Well, Jim, thanks so much for the time. It was a pleasure, and congratulations. Glad you are here to chat, and hopefully at some point I'll make it up and see you at PBNSG at some point in person.
Great. Look me up. There's 4,700 people that will welcome you with open arms. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a great day.
You too.